Thank you for coming out to the lovely mezzanine 159. Is that where we are? I'm Scott Castle. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Sisense. I'm going to come down here because this is like a really small audience. This feels very far away from these slides. Hi, I work for a company called Sisense. We do embedded analytics. It's a platform for embedding analytics into data products. And the reason why I'm here talking to you today, and hopefully the reason why you are here listening to me talk today, is that you are responsible for a data product, and you're trying to figure out what should be in your data product, and how do you present it to users. The reason why we're here at Databricks is that what goes into data products is almost exclusively either aggregate data or augmented data coming from ML models. Who in here is a product manager working on data products? You got 1, 2, 3, 4, awesome. Who here is a ML engineer? Nobody, okay. Front-end engineer, anybody? Actual like, application engineer? Nope, okay, cool. What do the rest of y'all do? Marketing, okay, cool. Marketing? Oh, very cool. All right, well, enjoy. I want to start by talking about kind of justifying why I'm here, and I have 3 numbers for you. First number is 89%. That's the percentage of organizations that, according to Howard Dresner, you know, the guy who coined the term BI, percentage of organizations that rate embedded analytics as important or very important for their product strategy. Next two, 43 and 25, Eckerson Group had surveyed a bunch of ISVs and found out that if you put data in your product, if you offer analytics in your product, your users will value your product more, 43% more, and you can charge 25% more. I have a bonus statistic for you as well. Gartner, not on the slide, but Gartner says of all the analytics activities in the world started by users, 60% will be started in and 30% will be completed in what Gartner calls digital workspace applications. And what Gartner means by digital workspace applications is not a BI tool, not an analytics tool, not Sigma, not Power BI, not an analyst-specific tool, but a line of business workplace tool. The kind of tools that anybody who's building a data product probably is building a data product for. Putting analytics into your products is a really big deal, and putting augmented analytics and putting ML outputs into your product is how you make money these days, growing and expanding an existing business. So the reason why I'm here is to share with you what I've learned in terms of what is most valuable to put into your data product and how you put it in there so that users actually engage with it and you get the kind of 25% increase in price that you can get if you do this right. This is what people got when they got analytics either in their product or on their desktop 5 years, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, today. Who here uses like a Tableau or a Power BI or something? Yep. And probably familiar with this. If you're an analytics professional, this probably isn't that scary. It's ugly, but it's not that scary. But if you are a knowledge worker who is not an analytics professional, you're a CSM, sales manager, operations manager, support, really any job outside of data, this is probably pretty intimidating. But this is what you get when people talk about putting data products into their existing products. But knowledge workers are picking up on trends pretty quickly. I'm sure you've all heard of ChatGPT, right? I hear from knowledge workers, hey, doesn't ChatGPT solve this problem? Because I imagine that the experience should be this. Show me my top 5 sales managers. Oh, hey, I get that, right? Look at this time series data and figure out for me what's important and figure out why it happened so I can tell my boss it's cool or no, it's not cool. We have to go invest in more marketing. This is the analytics experience that we are all moving to super, super fast. Some of us are already there. My product's actually already there, but a lot of others are there, do ThoughtSpot, tools like that. Even ChatGPT will generate your Python code for you and actually make these kind of charts if you just ask it to. And so if you think about going from those crazy dimensions and measures experiences to users who expect this, big problem, right? If you build a data product and it looks like and it feels like dimensions and measures, it's just not going to land. No one will use it. But if you do this, you get much better engagement. Composability is sort of the broad trend for how you get to those experiences. And I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. But composability is this broad trend that basically says, I've got an actual product that my customers use for actual reasons. It throws off a lot of data. I can bring that data together and analyze it, and I can package it up into things that my customers, my users, sorry about that, can actually turn into something valuable that they can use operationally, and they can put in their own places and collect into their own sort of single pane of glass to understand their business and how to do it better. But what's in that single pane of glass? So I work with, right now, about 2,000 companies. Over my career in analytics, about 6,000 or 7,000 companies that build data products. These are companies you've heard of: American Express, NASDAQ, Royal Bank of Canada, Air Canada, little ones like Yield Broker, all over the map, just tons and tons of different companies. And my job is largely to talk to them and figure out what they're building in their data products and how is that going for them. And so I've distilled that down into what are the key themes about what people actually find valuable in data products. Before I talk about what things are valuable, I just want to remind you of one thing. If you're building a data product, and this is maybe your first or second go at it, especially if it's your first go at it, your managers are probably saying, please get me straight to predictive analytics. I hear that's pretty cool. Let's add that to our product. Then we can make money. But of course, you're all familiar with the sort of hierarchy of analytics types. It's really easy to get to descriptive analytics. It's a bit harder to get to diagnostic analytics. It's a pretty large jump to get to predictive. And then to get to prescriptive is super hard. Most people can't get there right now. But if you don't start with the easy stuff, if you don't start with descriptive, the later stages aren't going to work. If you can't do basic descriptive analytics, you're building the house without building the foundation properly. It's not going to work. So just take it from me. Don't jump straight to predictive or prescriptive. Do all the groundwork first. But that being said, hey, what's valuable in a data product? The first thing that's valuable in a data product is anything you can share with your customers that you know because you work with lots of different customers. So industry benchmarks, performance benchmarks, anything you can do to provide a baseline. So for example, if you are NASDAQ, or you are Moody's, or you're a yield broker, and you see everybody's trades, everybody's risk ratings, everybody's loan packages, and you see like how that's going across an entire industry, any given player in that industry will pay you a lot of money for that industry benchmark against which they can compare their performance because they can't get that information anywhere else. No other competitor of theirs will share, but everybody will share with you if you're the OEM who's providing a service on that. So if you can collect that kind of information, just synthesize it into here's how most people are doing and here's where you are, or here's where you are, that's super valuable in and of itself. That is maybe the number one fastest and most valuable thing to add to a data product. Number two is anomalies and inflection points. You can find these with some pretty basic ML at this point. We use AutoML in my product to generate these, but it's pretty straightforward to get to these. But if you have time series data, or even non-time series data, and you have a lot of sort of trends that you're looking at, and then you can find anomalies and breakpoints in that data, and then if you can get to correlated variables, so other things in the model that are influencing those primary variables, if you can identify things that are important changes and what's driving them, that's also super valuable. Think about things like in the sales organization, customer churn, likelihood of a deal closing, suddenly losing a lot more deals than usual. Manufacturing plant, suddenly a bunch of chips coming out of the machines are not as good as they were. That's an inflection point. If you can figure out why, that's really valuable. The third one, this is actually the most common thing people add to data products, but it's the third most valuable, are predictions, projections, and forecasts. This is pretty straightforward. If you can predict the future, you can make business decisions around it, and people get really excited by that. And if you can predict the future reliably and relatively accurately, that's worth real money because somebody can figure out how to use that to position themselves well. And this is great if you have tons and tons of data, including ancillary data. If you have secondary variables that can help you figure out, are my predictions accurate? If you have real world data, you can say, this is what I predicted, and then this is how it actually happened. The closer you can get to a very accurate predictive model, the more valuable this is. And probably half the people at this show are fundamentally trying to build predictive models that accurately predict something because that's worth dollars. So if you have an ML engineering team that can generate this, or if you can even just grab a Power BI or a Tableau and generate this kind of stuff pretty easily with, you can even use things like Profit to do this, Hoyt or or Arima can do this as well. This is really good to add to a product because you'd say, here's how things are going, and here's where they'll be in a quarter, or in 6 weeks, or in 3 weeks. That feeds people's QBRs, they pay money for that, and you get the ancillary users, not just the core operators of your product, but you get the managers who are managing, who want those predictions, want the reporting, they want the data for their business reviews. Fourth one is root cause analysis. I like this one. This one's really cool. Root cause analysis is kind of like what I said about anomaly detection. It's digging into why something happened. These two examples here, this one on this side, that's not a very bright laser pointer. On this side, this is actually a company, customer of mine, who does security software. They're looking at intrusion events, and they're looking at why those intrusion events happened. What were the underlying causes? What was actually the thing that got broken into? Why was it vulnerable? Why wasn't it patched? Those root cause analyses are really important for identifying what do we do about it? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? How do we correct the issue? Figuring that out can be very expensive. So if you have a way to understand, here's what happened, here's all the data around what happened, here's a point in time snapshot of that, and here's where you should focus your attention. There's a lot of money that you can go get for that because otherwise it takes a lot of human hours. And on the right-hand side, this is actually a company that makes the machines that make silicon chips. It's kind of like it's not Applied Materials, but it's like what AMAT does. And they're constantly looking at chip yields. And when they can figure out, hey, these wafers are starting to come out bad because there's a contributing factor in the actual factory environment, you can figure out what was the root cause of those high failure rates, you can address it, and now you're producing more chips again, and now you're good again. These kind of capabilities, and literally to get that capability turned on in your machines, it's like $1 million, right? It's just that one little data product capability. These are also very attractive. The last one is using feature clustering for optimization. The reason why there's a car here is one of my customers, they make cars. I've actually been to their plant. It's really cool. It's like 3/4 of a mile long. They have these huge presses that press the bodies of the cars, and they analyze all the data coming off of those presses to figure out are the presses working properly. One of the most vulnerable parts of that factory is the paint shop, where they paint those cars. And it turns out that painting a car, it either comes out well or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, it gets reworked, and it's very expensive to do that. And so they look at how is the cars coming out of the paint shop, are they working, is it coming out well? But it turns out there's a couple of hundred features worth of data that can affect the paint outcomes. And there's not just like one thing. It's not like the temperature was wrong and so it's all bad, or if it's above 72, it's all good. There's a bunch of correlated factors that are all involved. One of the things I learned at the factory was if you have put chapstick on your lips within 24 hours, you're not allowed in the paint shop because the silicone in the chapstick will actually affect the paint jobs. So they take a couple hundred features of data, they scan it with all the labels of like good car, bad car, they figure out what are the contributing factors, and they figure out the pretty narrow band of factors that will get you a good paint job, and they keep the paint shop within spec so that they're constantly producing high quality cars. If you can figure out something like that to tell somebody, hey, it's a complicated, but here's good and here's everything else, also very valuable. So those are the 5 main things that I see people building into their data products. Fundamentally, these 5 things are actually 2 things. You either have information that you've gleaned from really intimately understanding the terrain of your business. You're like the mama bear leading her cubs through the ground terrain safely. Like your knowledge of that ground terrain is valuable, and if you can share it, your customers benefit, there's money there. Or you have information because of your position in the market. You're an ISV and everyone trusts you. You collect information as part of delivering your service. You have information that you've gleaned because of where you are, that eagle eye perspective. And that eagle eye is valuable to anybody on the ground who's trying to navigate. So you have kind of those 2 categories. Think about those as you plan your data products, because that's what's actually going to move units. It's going to move seats. It's going to drive engagement over time. Stuff like, hey, here's how much you've used my product, and here's how many users are in there, and here's how much time they've spent in my product. That might have been valuable 5 years ago. Nobody cares anymore. You need something like this. So that's part 1 of this talk. Part 2 is how do I get this to people without scaring them? How do I get it to people in a way that they can use it and engage with it? So this is how people used to do analytics in products. If you were running a SaaS product and you were told, hey, let's add analytics to the product, you probably came up with this. You went to your engineering team and said, let's put some data in the product, And the engineering team said, cool, I've heard of high charts. I can put a bar chart in the product, and we'll put some numbers in the product, and that'll be data. This is actually Greenhouse. I hate to pick on them, but I'm sorry, their analytics suck. These aren't even analytics, really. It's just like kind of like how much, there's a little bit of data, a little bit of basic aggregation. The problem with representing the data this way is as soon as you show most end users a line chart, or even an indicator number, they assume it's a BI tool. They assume you can filter, you can slice and dice, you can drill, you can cross-filter, you can export the data. And I'm sorry, but your high charts chart can't do any of those things. It's not a BI tool. There's a whole big difference between drawing a chart and making a BI tool. But users expect that. And so as soon as they see this and it's not clickable, it doesn't do stuff, you're like, this is junky. This feels bad. This feels like 5 years ago. So the way you solve that, the fastest way to solve that is you go buy a BI tool. And every BI tool on the planet can be embedded into something, somewhere or another. Most of them take an iframe, shove it right into your product, and then you've got real analytics, real like hardcore enterprise-grade analytics in your product. You can do this as cheaply as free and as expensively as like $100,000 a year, but it's very straightforward to do this. And what you get from doing that is you get immediately to real analytics in your product. It looks very cool, looks very flashy. The problem is that you've lifted and shifted all the complexity of a BI tool into your product. Now, if you're a product manager, you probably carefully crafted your user experience to work for your user personas. And unless you're building a tool for data analysts, it's probably not the user persona that the BI tool was built for. And so when your user lands in this BI tool, and they're like, cool, it's a pie chart, and they click on it, and suddenly there's dimensions and measures and a model, and they're like, oh my god, what is going on? It's not very good. So these are really good ways to start with analytics, because you can rapidly put stuff out. You can try different dashboards, try different charts, figure out what works, but don't stick with this, because it's not keeping up. And basically, of all the knowledge workers in the world, this is Gartner statistics as well as IDC and Forrester, of all the knowledge workers in the world, about 1 billion people, about 10% have learned to be comfortable with BI tools, and 90% have never scratched the surface. And so when you think about building this into your product for analytics, you think about, do I want 10% of my users? Because you're going to get that. The next thing users usually ask for once they've seen dashboards or charts in their product is, hey, these are cool, I like these a lot, but I want to customize it. I want it to have something slightly different, or I want to add something to it, or I want to change it. And so you say, cool, I bought a BI tool, I shoved it in my product, and I bet you we can shove the editor from that BI tool into the product as well. And then I have customization, which is great, again, if your users are BI experts. But if they're not, you kind of get a scary experience where suddenly you really are thrown into a modeling environment, and that's not as easy. It's a high skill barrier to entry. There are experience challenges. It's not going to feel like your product. It'll feel like Power BI or something else. But this is actually a good way to, again, rapidly get customization. But this works for almost nobody long term, even medium term. Users are just like, this is hard. Can you guys use this for me? This is a video that won't play because I exported it from Google Slides, so sorry about that. But I have a customer called Bright Bytes. This is a very ugly screenshot. It wasn't supposed to be a screenshot, but they built an analytics experience in their product. Bright Bytes is an education platform used by teachers and administrators to identify students who are at risk of flunking out of school and allowing teachers to intervene early. They use a bunch of machine learning and a bunch of analysis to figure out who's in trouble and who's not. But it's basically a workflow tool stuffed with analytics. But it's for people who do not know analytics, who can't spell SQL, who are not those kinds of users. They're teachers and administrators. And so they've built a user experience that feels very natural. It's a storytelling experience. The graphics are very friendly. There is all the same things you'd expect in a dashboard. It's got pie charts, it's got bar charts, it's got progress bars. But every part of it explains what the data is, why it's there, what to do about it, how to change it. It's all very easily populated. It makes it very engaging for those users. If you can get to that kind of an experience, then you think back to those 5 types of information I talked to you about earlier. If you can surface 1 or 2 of those, and the users can really engage with it, that gets really exciting. And in fact, Bright Bytes does more than just show pretty dashboards. They integrate the analytics function in their product with the activities in the product. So the users, they're not going to an analytics tab, they're not going to a separate experience. They're in the workflow. They're looking at their students, they're looking at who's doing well and doing badly, and then, hey, somebody's doing badly. Oh, hey, here's the next action to take. here's the recommended action, here's the thing you should do, here's the button to do it, or here's the button to make a different choice. That is called decision support. And when you do that, now you get massively high engagement with your analytics. And suddenly people start saying things like, I couldn't do my job without this tool, because not only does it tell me where I should put my focus, but what I should probably be considering in my next action. And if you integrate it deeply into the user experience, and your design team gets to say, here's how it should look, here are our usability factors, here's how our affordances work, now you're building a real product, not just a lifted and shifted BI dashboard. The next thing, this is more of the cutting edge of what people are doing with embedded analytics. This is actually a product called Outreach. Do you guys get emails from ADRs trying to sell you stuff? Those all come through Outreach, so I'm sorry, I apologize in advance. They're a customer of mine. Outreach is a tool for very young entry-level salespeople to send emails in bulk to people saying, hey, they put you on nurture track so to try and get you to engage with them and take a meeting. It's a very data-centric thing to do. Sales managers do this by hand with all their sales teams. Outreach automates that process. So it allows individual ADRs to be told sort of what's the next step, what to go do, who to call. You get lots and lots of data. Outreach is a product entirely built on a BI platform. It's built on top of Sisense. It's built on top of embedded analytics. Every single thing Outreach does is basically a SQL query, talking to some ML algorithms to sort of hint where it should go. But the user experience is all native, even though it's very data-centric. And it's all native because the users, they know how to do one thing. They know how to pick up the phone and dial the next person. And so they couldn't afford to build a BI experience. They had to build a workflow experience that matched what sales teams and sales managers did. And so Outreach built their entire native user experience, but everything they're doing in the product is just running queries through a relational algebra engine running on an analytics stack. In fact, one of the cool things that Outreach does is they link, again, native functionality to those analytics. In Outreach, there's actually a very data-heavy interface. This is where you land if you're an ADR, looking at all the different KPIs, all the different ways that sales managers are measuring you. And you get to see like your bar chart of all the people you called every single day by hour. And the blue bars down here, by the way, are the ones that didn't answer. Does anybody ever answer these guys when they call? I never do. Some people do. But if you click the blue bar, it immediately populates your call list with all the people who didn't answer last time, and it starts dialing. And it's that kind of sort of next best action integration that makes the analytics actually valuable. This is why Outreach is beating everybody else in their market, and this is the only tool ADRs use now. Now, all this is great, but as people start to ask questions about, well, how do I support that need for not just getting dashboards and KPIs, but how do I actually let my users ask questions? You want to think about how to incorporate what people call no-code analytics into your products. I mean, the short answer here is like, go grab GPT-4 and integrate it into your product. I can actually show you how to do that if you want it. And do this. But people are starting to accept that they can express, here's my business question, and the machine can figure it out. And if you can couple your unique proprietary data you've collected with an interface that allows you to say, hey, this is my question, this is the context, what is the answer? Especially if you can do it conversationally and ask follow-on questions. You get an experience that end users really engage with and they start to value. This allows you to leverage advanced functionality. One of the coolest things about LLMs, not just GPT, but actually all of them that are coming out, is they'll actually generate code for you. And so you can actually ask the LLM to generate the code for you, which you can then run for the end user. And so you can allow some sort of unguided exploration. It's pretty sophisticated analysis without actually having to build it up front. But when you go to do this, look for building blocks. Look for pieces you can link into your product, not whole end-to-end solutions, because the end-to-end solutions are usually a generation behind in terms of the tech stack. This is an example of this. You can also, this is something actually we built in our product for working with users. This is Google Slides, if you don't recognize it. Google Slides is a really common platform for building QBR decks, doing what I do, building these kind of presentation decks. And what you oftentimes see users doing is going into an analytics tool, screenshotting data, pasting it into their slides, and then moving forward. And it requires a lot of help. They need to have a BI environment. They need to have an analyst to help them create those things. But in something like this, where if you integrate NLQ directly into your product, like we have done here with Google Slides, you can allow users to ask questions like, hey, give me a graph of the performance of my sales team over time in this region, and boom, it'll just show up. Building these kind of integrations means that when you have valuable data and you want to reach users, you can reach everybody who has your product. Or if you build them for things like this, like you can build something like this for Google Sheets, you can reach everybody who has Sheets, not just everybody who has your product. So think about how to disseminate your data product to reach the most users and actually get it out, get your information out to people in a way that they can digest. I'm going to skip this. There we go. I want to talk about how to develop this. I realize that nobody in here is an engineer. A couple of you are product managers, so you're probably working with engineering teams. As you think about how to get your data products built into something that your users can actually use, think about how you're going to support it in your dev process over time. Everybody who wants to sell you an analytics platform or an analytics tool, Power BI, Tableau, Looker, everybody else, they're building a sort of a thing that exists to the side of your software product. And as you build new versions of your product, you're going to have to link it to that BI environment. And as those things drift further and further apart, you'll have problems. Dev teams hate this. They don't want 90% of the product to be under their control in Git, in their SCM, as part of their DevOps, and 10% of it to be in some BI thing over here that isn't managed and isn't part of the development process. There are almost no BI tools or platforms that integrate with software development methodologies the way we would expect things to. So make this a priority. Look for this. Ask, how do you integrate with my GitHub? How do you integrate with my SCM process? How do you integrate with my DevOps? How do you integrate with my CI/CD? Can I at least export the things I build in your tool into my repo host, into my SCM system so that I can manage it? Or am I buying into a platform that's going to leave me sort of stranded as my dev team branches and merges and develops and releases software? I mentioned BI tools sort of a lot in passing. I'm not here to talk about BI today. But one of the things that I started this talk with was, hey, I've heard of high charts. I can make charts. That's analytics, right? As you think about how to surface your data product to your users, there's a really big difference between just running a basic SQL query on a database and using a BI engine, something that's been built for this, to generate the queries that do that. And the difference is cost. Anybody here run Snowflake or BigQuery? Anything that costs like per query or by rows scanned? This will matter a lot to you. As you build analytics into your product to support your data product, if you have engineers handwriting SQL code, it might be really efficient, but as soon as you start changing it, they're not going to make it that efficient. And it's going to cost you a certain amount of money in Snowflake credits or in GCP credits. And if you don't refine those queries and make them as efficient as possible, you'll end up spending multiples of what you would have otherwise spent. Every BI vendor who's been around for 20, 30 years has figured out all the cool hacks, all the relational algebra to make this really efficient, replacing joins with where-ins, making sure aggregations happen at the lowest level of compute, designing for the specific query planners in Redshift or Snowflake or whatever engine you're using. That stuff matters. It's actually how BI companies compete, is like who has the fastest, best, most efficient relational engine. This is what you're paying for in a lot of cases when you buy a BI tool. Not just the charts, not the dashboards, not the UI. You're actually paying for the actual relational algebra and the compute. And this is going to matter in your COGS. Part 3, very last part. Then we'll have some time for questions if you want. The most common question I get when I talk to product managers about building data products is not, what's your favorite chart, or what kind of data should I put in my product? The biggest question is, how do I justify the engineers to go build this thing? Has anybody here had to answer that question? Yeah? The thing you need to know is, what's your business model going to be for your data product? And I'm here to share with you that there are 3 business models that are kind of the most common patterns. The first one, the most common, is expansion and retention. This is what I call the value pile business model. This is, I have a product, it has users, it has revenue, yay, everything's going great. I'm going to add analytics and data to that product. It'll be part of the value of the product, and I'll just get more customers because I have that. And I'll retain more, I'll expand more, I'll reach more adjacent users. It's all going to be, yay, very happy. And so this is kind of the most straightforward business model. It's the least interesting, but it's the one that you use when you say, I've got a really established product. I have my differentiators all laid out. If I add analytics, I'm just adding a little bit of extra sauce. The cool thing about expansion and retention is it allows you, it's a business model that allows you to get adjacent users. So if I have my core operators, and they're the ones who actually use my product, by adding analytics, I may get the managers, I may get the operations people, I may get the people who just need the data, who don't even use my product, but they want the data about it. I get those adjacent seats. I'm also less likely to get kicked out or churned to a competitor if the data that's generated by my product is used by the people who make the purchasing decisions about which product to buy, right? So that's what falls into the expansion and retention business model. The second one is service tiers. This one is where you say, I have a product, my customers are using it. My customers are very diverse. A bunch of them are SMBs, some of them are mid-market companies, I have a few enterprise customers, and most of my customers won't get a lot of value out of analytics, but they could use a little bit. But I have some customers who will pay quite a bit for those additional insights I can share. This is where you get like industry averages are really important, or good predictive capabilities are very important. And you can charge a relatively small part of your population more money to get the more sophisticated analytics. And then you usually have like 3 or 4 or 10 or 12 enterprise customers who honestly just want a JDBC connection because they have better analysts than you do. But you can sell them even better access or access to even more powerful machine learning in a tiered model. This is the service tiers model. The third one, the most exciting one, is the adjacent use cases. This is where I have a product that does a thing, and through doing that thing, it throws off data, which is valuable not to its users, but to another department. So think about like if I run a wind farm and I have data about how efficient the turbines actually are, how efficient the generators are, what's the mean time between failure for different parts. That data is, yeah, somewhat useful to the person who runs the wind farm, but it's super useful to the suppliers who provide maintenance, or it's really useful to the logistics folks who are managing lots of wind farms. The reason why this is really interesting is that when I have that kind of data, I can create other products, whole standalone products I can sell to other departments. I can cross-sell, I can go vertically integrated. These can become very big business. You're generating data from one use case to use in a different use case. Sometimes it even feeds multiple steps down the chain. And this is where you get really interesting vertically integrated software packages that reach lots of different users, which becomes a competitive advantage all of its own. This is the most rare in terms of like you need to have really interesting information to do this. But if you have this, this is the most valuable. This is where you can even get whole spin-off companies sometimes off of these kinds of models. But these are the three. There's probably another one out there, but I don't really, these are the three I hear all the time. So yeah, hope that was useful. So we talked about the types of data insights people value, what they're using in their data products. We talked about how to get those to end users in ways that are interesting. And we talked about how to package those things up and sell them. So I'm Scott. If you have any questions, please let me know. And thanks for being here.